Hello and welcome once again to the Sankofa show. For those of you watching this show for the first time, my name is Rudolph Hinekupokwato and I am your host. I continued with the Willie Lynch letters last week and finished reading and explaining the breaking process of the Negro War. However, before we continue with the rest of the letter, I would like to say that a lot of people were very emotional about the topic and went on to ask similar questions, which all points to one thing. Will we ever receive reparations? Or in the layman's term, would we receive some form of payment or compensation from the beneficiary countries for the wrong that was done to our ancestors? Now, after what we are going to talk about today, I will leave the answer to you, for you to judge whether you think Africa deserves any form of compensation. Now, after centuries of being dehumanized and treated as nothing, most of the times even worse than animals, one can imagine the ecstatic state of joy when this inhumane trade was finally abolished. At last, these human beings, these Africans, have become free men and women. The sheer joy of being liberated made them happy souls and rekindled their spirits. But for how long? And at what price? Economically, they were still bound. In Britain and America, for example, slave owners were compensated by their governments, since slaves were regarded as property and not human beings. Because of that, the slaves themselves received nothing for all their toil, labor, and death, which laid the foundations of the economic independence of these beneficiary countries. Now, the absence of any compensation created a massive economic need among black people all over the world, which can only be filled by the same people who enslaved them and caused this economic hardship. Rather than help them feel the need, the situation rather opened doors for further exploitation by these beneficiary countries, accordingly widening the gulf in terms of development between the richest countries in the world and the developing nations. Yet a bigot like Richard Spencer, the leader of what they call the alt-right, an otherwise supremacist group, recently said during an interview that Africans have benefited from their experience with white supremacy. According to him, the average life of an African American in the United States is far better than any African living in Africa. Really? Is he serious? That the average life of an African American is better than any African living in Africa? Is this man ignorant, or his bigotry has eaten into his brain? He also said that slavery was good for Africans. He argued that the ancestors of the slaves benefited from living in a different nation than in Africa. This man believes that a race of people who were captured and forcibly removed from their homes, bound into cargo ships, packed like sardines, ill-fed for a journey that took 3 to 4 months, have to thank those who did that to them for their ordeal. These human beings were chained in rows on the floor of the hold or on shelves that ran around the inside of the ship's holds. These shelves were less than a meter high. And often, these enslaved Africans could not even sit up. According to Olaudah Equiano, the Nigerian slave boy who was captured and enslaved when he was only 12 years old, he said the stench on the hold was intolerably loathsome. Why? Because these people had scarcely any room to turn themselves. That was where they ate. That was where they slept. And that was where they even defecated. These people could hardly breathe because the situation produced copious perspirations which made the air unfit for respiration. This brought on sickness, of which many of these Africans died. They became bad cargo and were thrown into the high seas. These human beings were further dehumanized on the plantations. They were beaten. They were lynched. Women and daughters were raped. Suckling babies were forcibly removed from their mothers, some even killed. According to Equiano, he's seen a slave beaten until some of his bones were broken for only letting a pot boil over. He's seen slaves put into scales and weighed, and then sold from 3 pence to 9 pence a pound. That is what you do to goat meat and cow meat and other dead meat, don't you? After all these, we are told that slavery was good for us. Even sometimes our own people, African people, say that. I remember during my research for one of my books, an African work colleague who is also a pastor, a man of God, during a conversation on the topic of slavery, asked me why I was becoming so passionate about the whole episode. As if I am giving a gun to kill the white man, I would do it without hesitation. I was stunned when he said that. However, his statement that followed nearly knocked me off my seat. The so-called man of God said, and I quote, "Black people should solve their own problems because white people have been given an advantage by God." I don't know what kind of God he was talking about. But he continued. He said, "You shouldn't try to stand in the way of someone who has got a head start." Those were his exact words. So, was it God who made this happen to Africans like him just to give the white man a head start? The same God he claims to be worshiping who created man in his own image. Is that what he will tell his congregation if a member should bring up this topic? Beloved, I was speechless. Because I did not expect those kind of words from an African man who calls himself a man of God. However, what kind of a head start have white people got? Do you call over 200 years of official slavery, of free labor, the oppression of other races, people's blood, especially Africans, to oil the machinery that builds the foundations of the economy of the beneficiary countries, a head start from God? What kind of God is that? What white people have is unearned privilege from slavery and colonialism, which benefited their countries as a whole by building a lasting economic pillar for their race that gave them that unearned advantage. Beloved, what we've got to understand is that over 200 years of official slavery guaranteed the white progeny or white people and their descendants that privilege and head start. And the same 200 years plus of official slavery without any compensation for the slaves brought about death and devastation on the people, African people, that we are yet to shake off. So don't tell me the white people have been given an advantage or head start from God. Next time, we will talk about reparation or compensation and who, if at all, it has to be paid to. Thank you. And as usual, if you have any questions regarding this topic, do not hesitate to send it or any comments to our comment section at the Sankofa Show. Thank you and goodbye.